Gross pay is how much money you earn before deductions are taken from your paycheck. Deductions are costs that are taken away from your pay. There are some mandatory ones that everybody over the age of 18 pays. They pay into the Canadian Pension Plan, the CPP, EI, which is called employment insurance, and income taxes. First Nations people will not pay income tax if they work on reserves. Okay? But if you work off of reserve, then you would pay income tax. Okay? So you have to keep that in mind. All right? And your tax is dependent on where you live. Like where we live or where we are, because I know even though you might be here for school, you might not consider this your home, but where we are right now, we're of course very close to Saskatchewan. Now, if I think of some teachers in our school, like Mr. Yaremchuk, our power mechanics teacher, he obviously works here in Manitoba, but he actually lives in Saskatchewan. So he doesn't pay, he pays Saskatchewan taxes even though he works in Manitoba because it's based on where you live. Okay? So there's that kind of thing to kind of keep in mind as well. Now let's talk about some of these deductions. Canadian Pension Plan is a retirement plan administered by the federal government. Participation is mandatory for employees and employers in all provinces and territories. The CPP provides basic pension benefits when you retire. Generally, the amount you receive when you retire depends on how much you paid into the plan. In the event of your death, the plan pays benefits to your survivors. The amount you receive currently is no more than $1,000 per month. So let's pause on that for a second. Do you think, even as a retiree, $1,000 a month is enough to live on? No. So that's why when you graduate high school, it's important to have a job where, if it's possible, they pay into a pension for you so you can have extra money when you retire. Okay? So it's not like you should be waiting for, your CPP jackpot to come in when you're older, because if that's what you think, you're going to be very, very disappointed. $1,000 a month is not much. It's not nothing, but it's not enough to pay for everything you want it to pay for. Okay? So it is important to have pension or investments elsewhere. Now, the CPP contributions are 4.95%. That's out of date. It changes every year. And I just actually looked at what it is now. So it's not 4.95%. As a matter of fact, what it is 5.45%. Okay? It's 5.45%. The maximum that you can pay into this in a year is $3,166.45. So what happens after you contribute that maximum? Well, you stop paying it. You only pay that much per year. Okay? So that's CPP. Now, EI is a little different. EI is a federal program that provides temporary assistance to unemployed Canadians who have lost their job under certain circumstances. The amount you receive is based on what your pay was at your last job. EI, it used to be 1.88%. It's actually gone down. Now it is 1.58%. 1.58%. The maximum that you pay into it per year is $889.54. And again, all that means is when you pay the maximum, you stop contributing for that year. Okay? Income taxes are paid federally and provincially. Your tax dollars go towards funding provincial and federal programs. One of the things, so you pay both provincial and federal taxes. You pay provincial and federal taxes. Provincial taxes, probably the two most important things that provincial tax pays for are healthcare and education. Your provincial tax dollars go towards a lot of making sure people have hospitals to go to when they're sick, and so that children can come to school and learn amazing things like math. Okay? There are also optional deductions as well. Now, when I say they're optional, they're not your option as an employee. They're the option of the employer. Some of these are optional, but they're not optional for the workers, they're optional for the companies. And here they are. You might have a pension. As we said, the CPP is not enough to live on, so many jobs have an additional pension that employees pay into. If you work for a really good job, then your employer might match your contribution and you'll have double that money in a pension for you. Union dues. If you belong to a union, you need to pay money to help the union conduct meetings. Does anybody know what a union is? Okay, so let's say this. Let's say that you all wonderful math students decide to help me mark my other class's work, and I pay you, okay? And let's say I decide to pay Draven more than Aiden because Draven likes WWE. Is that fair? No, it's not fair. It's crap, right? Wrestling. So, like, that's a nonsensical reason to pay Draven more money, right? Now, if Draven did more work, that would be a logical reason to pay somebody more, right? But if it's just because of something silly like what he likes, that's a bad reason. Now, you can think of all sorts of bad reasons why people might do things as bosses or companies, okay? And basically what a union does is it makes sure that everybody gets treated fairly, is basically the gist of it. Everybody gets treated fairly. And if you don't get treated fairly, you get to go to your union and say, hey, listen, that Mr. Hutton, that jerk is paying me less because I don't like wrestling. Like, what the heck is going on here? And the union's going to come up to me and they're going to slap my wrist and say, come on, man, you can't do that. So basically, if a union does its job properly, the job of the union is to protect the workers and make sure the workers are treated equally. But in order for a union to exist, they have to have leaders and resources, and those things have to be paid for. So if you have a job with the union, you have to pay union dues. Okay? So that's what a union is. It's a group to protect you. Benefits. You're all very young. I hope you're all very healthy, so you don't really have to worry about a lot of this stuff. But benefits do become important at some point in your life. Stuff like vision, prescription drugs, dental, chiropractor, massages, braces, all sorts of things. Those are all benefits you can get from your job. Now, when you get these benefits, they might not pay for everything, but they pay for most of the expense. They pay for most of the expense. The cost of these plans is deducted from your gross pay. Now, here's the thing. I think I mentioned this when we talked about jobs. But if I didn't, I'll mention it now. My uncle is in his mid-60s. He has MS, and his medicine costs $4,000 a month. And it's completely covered by his job. So he's still working so that he can get his medicine paid for, so he can live a somewhat normal life. Okay? So, like, that's a pretty good benefit for that job, because if he didn't have that job, he couldn't afford that medicine. So benefits are important. And if you think about your future, if you have kids and your kids have need like I said, braces, or need to go get a tooth filled or something like that, when you have a job and you have medical benefits, it can cover your whole family. It doesn't just cover you. It covers you, it covers your spouse, it covers your kids. So benefits are important. But in lots of jobs, you pay part of those benefits. You still get a lot out of it, but you pay for them. Okay? And that's one of those things that you just can't be like, oh boy, my son needs braces, I'm going to get benefits so that it'll cover it. You have to accept the benefits when you take the job. And even if you don't use the benefits for 5 years, you have to pay into them every month. And then when your family needs them, they're there. There are situations where you can opt out, but if you opt out, you just can't opt in. So it's either you're in or you're out. And if you're in and you don't need it, well, then you still pay into it. Because the whole idea of this is basically that everybody's paying into it, but maybe only a small percentage are actually using it. Life insurance is a thing where if you pass away at a younger age, because usually when we're not working when we're super old, that it pays your beneficiary whatever your benefit is. Okay? But that's something that you often pay for. Parking. Now this is, we're in Cranberry Portage, which is not a big deal, but if you work in like Winnipeg, parking at the Health Sciences Center in Winnipeg is like $12 a day. And if you're an employee that works there, you don't get free parking, man. You have to pay for it. So that could be a deduction that comes off your paycheck. When I started as a teacher here, way back in 2003, we had a coffee fund. Now, I didn't drink coffee then, so I didn't pay into it. But we had a coffee fund that everyone paid $20 into at the beginning of the year, and that would cover it, so we'd have coffee in the staff room. So your workplace may have a coffee fund where everybody pays into a certain amount of money, and that makes sure there's coffee for everybody for the whole year. Now, as an informal basis, there's also a gift fund. So, for example, let's say somebody you work with has something really happy in their life, like maybe they buy a house, or let's say something sad happens, like a loved one passes away. There's a gift fund so that you can buy those people a little pick-me-up, a little congratulations gift, if you will. But that money doesn't come out of nowhere. Everybody chips in, puts money into a fund, and that makes sure there's money there for those things. Depending on what kind of job you have to have a certain type of clothes. Now, you might be told you have to wear exactly a certain thing, like a certain type of pants and a certain type of shirt. Or they might just say, like, you can't wear jeans or blah, blah, blah. Now, if it's special stuff that they say you have to wear, then they might have to order it for you, and then you might have to pay them back through a deduction. Or if it's just like, basically don't look like a slob, they won't take money off your check, but of course they'll expect you to buy your own clothes. Depending on what type of job you have, you might need tools or supplies. So, some jobs, like teachers, don't require you to buy supplies, but it can be useful for you to do so. So, for example, that electric pencil sharpener at the back of the classroom, I bought that. Because as long as it's working, it works way better than that little mechanical one. Okay? Now, with all that said, we have net pay. Net pay is how much money you get to take home. It's the amount of money you get to spend after all your employment-related bills are paid. So your net pay is equal to your gross pay minus your deductions. So let's do an example. Cliff works at a music store. He gets paid $19.30. During the last 2 weeks, he has worked 65 hours. His deductions are given below. Find his net pay for the 2-week period. So before we do that, we need to find his gross pay. So the gross pay is whatever 65 times $19.30 is. And I get $1,1254.30. That's his gross pay. Now again, that's his pay before the deductions come off his check. So what we need to do is we need to take all of these deductions and we need to add them together. So 6210 plus 2358 plus 27206 plus 100 for the other two expenses, and we get, if we add all those together, 457.74. That's his total for deductions. Now, like I said, to figure out how much money Cliff is going to take home, we're going to take $1,254.30 and minus $457.74. And that gives us a balance of $796.56. That's how much Cliff has at the end of his 2 weeks. Okay, we made a wee little correction here. The gross pay is $1,254.50, which gives us a net pay of $796.76 for Cliff. Okay, so a couple more examples here. First of all, we'll talk about Leah. Leah works as a dental hygienist. Her annual salary is $56,000. She's paid weekly. She pays a certain amount of taxes, a monthly amount for parking, $25 for life insurance, and $150 for pension. So this is actually fairly straightforward, but there are a few wrinkles in here that we haven't dealt with yet. So first of all, it asks us, because this is weekly, okay? Couple things. We need to turn this annual salary into a weekly salary. And we also need to take $50 monthly for parking and turn that into a weekly amount. Okay. So start off with the salary first. 56,000. There are 52 weeks in the year. So we're going to divide 56,000 by 52. And if we divide it by 52, we get 1,076.92. So that would be her salary each week. Now, the $50 monthly parking thing, that's a little trickier because, you know, I know we can say, well, there's 4 weeks in a month. Well, sometimes there is, but actually sometimes there's a little bit more than that. So what we actually have to do with the parking is we have to turn it into an annual and then dial it back to a weekly thing. So if it's $500 monthly, we can multiply that by 12 to give us how much it is for a year. Okay, so it's going to be 600 per year. And then we're going to take that 600 and divide it by 52. And when we do that, we're going to get $11.54 per week. So that's how much the weekly parking amount will be. Okay, so now we're going to find the CPP and the EI. But to find the CPP and the EI, we're going to use the weekly salary as our guide. So CPP, the percentage I gave you earlier is 5.45%. So we're going to find out what 5.45% of that is. So 5.45% of 1076.92. So that's going to be 0.0545 times 1076.92. And we're going to multiply those together. And the CPP is going to be $58.69. So that's how much she'll pay into CPP every week. Now, EI is 1.58% of that 1076.92. So that's 0.0158 times 1076.92. And for that, I get $17.02. So that's how much the EI is. Okay, so now find the net pay. So we got to add up all the deductions. So the deductions are $236.53 in taxes, the parking, we figured it out per week, and the per week parking is $11.54. Life insurance is $25. And $150 for her pension. So we're going to add up all those deductions. Oopsies. I forgot CPP and EI. That is $58.69 and $17.02. Now we're going to add up all those deductions. If you add all those together, I think you should get $498.78 for the total of the deductions. So we've got our deductions. Now we can subtract them from the gross pay. $1,076.92 minus $498.78. And we get a difference of $578.14. That's the net pay. That's how much she makes as a dental hygienist. How much she can take home and spend on other bills, buy groceries, or buy whatever she wants. That's the money that she gets to take home. Okay, we got one last example. Here we go. When you have a job, some of you might have worked at the cafeteria or might work there right now. I don't know. If you do, you'll get a pay stub. And your pay stub as a minor would be different than an adult's pay stub because, like I said, some of these deductions only start to come into play when you turn 18. But a pay stub is still an indication of how they basically calculate how much money you get. Okay? So let's go over all the information on this pay stub. Okay, this is Jack Conrad. He works for Math R Us. This is his employee ID. This is when this is up to March 31st. This is his paycheck. And he gets paid on April the 1st. That's his pay date. And just as a reference, this is check number, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't really matter. So when we look at how much he's getting paid, we see that he works 16 regular hours. 40 regular hours, and he gets paid $16 an hour to work a regular hour. He works 8 overtime hours. And when he works an overtime hour, he gets paid $24 an hour. So as we know, if we take 16 times 40, well, we got 640. And if we take 24 times 18, well, we get 192. And of course, if we take those two numbers here, the regular pay and the overtime pay, and we add them together, well, then we get $832. So that's where his gross pay comes from. These are all calculations that we've done in previous units. But it does say that year to date, he has this $3,200 in regular pay and $960 in overtime pay. And altogether, an income of $4,160 so far. Now, if we go over to the deductions, we've got a lot of familiarity stuff here: CPP, EI, income tax, union dues, life insurance. Canada Savings Bond is just a type of insurance, or rather investment, if you want to invest money. I don't think they make them anymore, but they used to be a nice way to invest money. And a long-term disability. Now, we didn't talk about that, so let me touch on that, okay? Let's say you have a job. So, with long-term disability, okay? Think about this, all right? You have a job, and you're working at your job, all right? Now, you're walking to your car after work, and you slip on the ice. And you break your hip. and you're laid up for the next 2 months. Okay? Some jobs, not all jobs, but some jobs would be like, sucks to be you. You get no money. Okay? Now, what long-term disability is after you use whatever sick time you have, because jobs have a certain amount of sick days you might get. After you use those sick days, if you're still not better from whatever, maybe it's something like that, maybe you needed surgery on your knee, who knows what happened, then you'd go on long-term disability. Now, when you're on long-term disability, you may not make every single penny you would make working, but it would be at least get you a lot more money than nothing, okay? And let's say, gosh forbid, something really bad happened. Like, let's say you work in a warehouse and you're stocking shelves or something, and you do something really bad to your back and you need surgery, and the doctor tells you you can't work that job anymore. Well, if you have long-term disability, I mean, conceivably, they would pay your long-term disability for the rest of your working life. So you could be on long-term disability for 6 months, or you might be on long-term disability for 6 years, or you might be on long-term disability for 26 years, depending if you can never recover and go back to work. But again, this is a service or some kind of a thing that's in place that has to be paid for. So who pays for it? Well, it's the people that are working, right? The people that are working that job pay for it in case one of their fellow employees gets hurt and needs to go on disability. So everybody pays into the long-term disability plan at some jobs. Like, I have it as a teacher, okay? I do have that as a teacher, and it's a nice option to have if, gosh forbid, I hurt myself and had to take some time off work and I didn't have enough sick days to do it. Now, some jobs don't have long-term disability, and that's kind of problematic, because then all of a sudden, especially if you hurt yourself on the job, if you hurt yourself on the job and you don't have long-term disability, you would hope that the workplace would take care of you because you were working their job, right? You were doing what they wanted you to do and you hurt yourself. And most jobs will do that, but it's not a guarantee. So that's what long-term disability is it's basically paying into a program so that if you get hurt, you will be protected and you don't have to worry about how am I going to pay my rent, how am I going to put clothes on my kids' backs and all that kind of stuff. Now, these are the current totals for all those things. These are the year-to-date totals for all those things. And then the sum of both of those is down below. Now, in order to figure out what the net pay is, what you would do, of course, is take the gross pay, subtract the deductions, and voila. That's your net pay. So if we look at just this one pay stub, not the whole year, just this one pay stub, how many regular hours did Jack work? 40, that's right. And what is his weekly gross pay? $832. How much were his CPP, EI, and taxes combined? So CPP is this one, EI is this one, taxes is this one. 348.02?
348.02.
Thank you very much. So we add those together and we get 348.02. So some of the questions that I might ask you are just read the numbers off the pay stub, and some of them we have to read numbers off pay stubs and then add them or subtract them or do stuff with them. Lastly, it says, what's his year-to-date net pay? His year-to-date net pay. Well, we have his year-to-date gross pay and his year-to-date deductions. So what we need to do is we need to take that 4160 and subtract 2376.13, and that gives us $1,783.87. That's his year to date net pay.